More calls for change tonight after Texas lawmakers found out many of ERCOT's board members don't live in Texas. KXAN investigator Jody Barr dug into where those members are from and how this happened in the first place.
Well, the explanation is simple. The law allows it. The ERCOT board is made up of people connected to Texas Energy and people who are known as unaffiliated. That means they can't have any ties to Texas Energy. That's how these 5 of the 15-member board took charge of Texas's energy grid. ERCOT board chair Sally Telberg lives in Michigan, and vice chairman Peter Crampton, an economics professor, his social media profile shows he lives in California. Terry Bulger lives in Illinois. Raymond Hepper lives in Maine, and Vanessa Ansetti Pereira doesn't even live in the country. Her LinkedIn profile shows she lives in Canada. ERCOT CEO Bill Magnus didn't answer questions today about the ERCOT chairwoman calling Michigan home.
How can you best serve Texans with a board chair that lives in another state?
Right now, the way we can best serve Texans is to focus on getting generation and load in balance, on working with our control room operators and other staff with the generators to get power back on for everyone. That's the priority right now. And I think if folks want to look at how ERCOT is run and who runs it, I mean, that obviously is part of the investigation of what we're doing in the future. You know, all those things are on the table, but I think there was no impact of the chair of the ERCOT board of directors.
Representative Matt Schaefer is the latest Texas lawmaker to indicate taking another look at ERCOT's residency requirements.
That is definitely a problem. We have to look at the leadership, and we have to look at the function, and we have to look at how we're setting policies that allow us to not use the resources that we have. It would be like if you lived in a grocery store and you were starving to death. It would only be by your own choice. We live in a state with the most abundant energy sources on the planet. There's no reason we should be starving for energy.
Well, ERCOT's bylaws don't require its unaffiliated members to live in Texas, but the rules state residents in the state of Texas is preferred. We also found 3 current ERCOT board members were also on the board in 2011 when the feds published a report detailing failures inside ERCOT's power grid after a similar storm hit in Texas. Board member Nick Fehrenbach of Dallas, Clifton Carney from Waco, and Kevin Gresham were all part of the board then. That storm left more than 3 million Texans without power for several days. Well, that list also includes current ERCOT CEO Bill Magnus, who at the time was a vice president and ERCOT's general counsel. I reached out to all 3 members and the CEO asking for an interview, but no one has yet agreed to one. Jody Barr, KXAN investigates.
Former Governor Rick Perry was governor during that 2011 storm. Perry is quoted in the U.S. House Republican leader's blog today. Texas has its own independent power grid, not subject to the same federal regulations like other states. That's what he said. Perry also criticized green energy in the blog post, suggesting Texas's reliance on it was partially to blame for turning the lights off across the state. Perry was the U.S. Secretary of Energy under the Trump administration until he stepped down in 2019.